በጣም ያኮራኛል ኢትዮጵያዊነት የሀገሬ ፍቅር ጠልቆ በስሜት አንቺ ነፃነት እኮ የታሪክ አውድማ በዓለም ተሰራጭቶ ዝናሽ የተሰማ
ተሐሪቁ በሓባር ኮይኖም ኮሩና ገይሩና ሰምሓራይ ዘለና ሒሳብ ክነወራርዶ ኢና ክወራረድ ኣለዎ ወራረድ ይዘሎ ወራረድ ነገር የለም።
ይህ የትህነግ ጀነራል ከጫካ የተናገረ ነው። ጌታቸው ሽፈራው እንደሚለው መድረክ መሪዎችም በድምፅ ማጉያ ሂሳብ እናወራዳለን እያሉ ከታዳሚው ጋር ይደጋግሙታል።
ወይ ንግረ መንገዱ ወይ ሐሲብና ኸነወራርዶ ይዘለና ክነወራርዶ ኮይና ሰነፈ የወራርድ ዲግና ይዘወራርድ ስለዚህ ምድጋን የድል ከለ ሂሳብ ኣለና مشاعيس حسابنا أنا ورا بين كل دينا كنا ورا كلنا
A region like New York just goes and attacks its own Air Force base or National Defense Force, and that's what they did on November 3rd. They attacked the National Defense Force of Ethiopia, which is located in the northern part of Tigray, and in the hopes of returning to power. So remember, they were in power for 27 years, controlling Ethiopia, dominating the economy, everything, and stolen and embezzled millions and millions and trillions of dollars, really, because we're seeing the money floating around in DC, where I'm from, and all the lobbyists are being paid by them to create all this news on a daily basis about how they're being victimized when they are actually the ones who have abused Ethiopia and the rest of the Horn Africa with the power and money that they've embezzled for the last 27 years. So basically, now the fight is not really about people to people. It's about dictators wanting to come back after 27 years, after the people have thrown them out. And it's a sad situation because news articles and Western media is putting it like there is, genocide and there is rape and there's this going on and this, and Africans are killing each other and raping each other. But that's not what it is. What we really need to understand and stand up for.
Just talk a little closer to the mic so we can hear.
Is really understand and stand up for is it's dictators who are being supported by the Western powers to basically loot their own countries. And this is like Black Lives Matters Africa, because why are, dictators who are like thugs like this, who steal money, who dictate, who kill, murder their own people to stay in power, being supported by big, Western world countries? Why are they? Because they become the running dog for their errands, because the people don't like them.
Why is it not in the press as much? Because we don't see anybody talking about it, or nor do we see it, hear it, nowhere.
So what you hear in the press is a lot of it is about victims, about people being killed or people being raped, the chaos that happens when one basically is a terrorist organization and one is the government that are trying to protect the citizens and protect the country. You see a lot of the news talking about what's happening to the people, but you don't get the story behind it.
Right. So actually, for us who follow this stuff regularly, there's an enormous amount of news coming out every day, more than we're typically accustomed to since November. And a lot of the news is just straight disinformation. In fact, it's a joke. I mean, it's a serious matter, but it comes down to a joke, because they're saying there are massacres, right? And then, for instance, we'll have like the massacre that took place in Aksum, a historic city in Tigray. On November 29th, they said that there was this massacre of 750 people. Ever since then, or the thing that they don't tell you is that the very next day, they had a huge festival that's broadcast live on national TV, where they're saying everything is great and all is well. But if you read the reports on what came out, then they said that there was the stench of death in the air, that there was mass bodies were being awaiting to be put into mass graves. So how do you have the very next day this type of thing? I mean, I can go down the list. There's so many different things like this. You have in another example, there was a massacre, a so-called massacre in an area called Dangalat, at a church, Mariam Dangalat. And what they said was that there was 250 people roughly that were killed. And you have on CNN journalist Nima Al-Bagher, who right now is leading an EU U.S. discussion on this issue to bring R2P to Eritrea, which is responsibility to protect and basically war on Eritrea and Ethiopia. She says she has the CNN video where they're testifying what actually happened, and there's this villager on camera. Well, what she doesn't know, actually she does, but she ignores, is that there was the full length of that video. If you look, the villager is actually being coached and saying, some number for how many people are killed. And then the guy's like, no, say some other number. And then the guy like changes the number, and it's just like right in front of your face. It's so blatant. And we approached Nima Al-Bagher, and she just ignores this. CNN ignores this. And this is the mainstream narrative, because they want to ramp up a war against African people. If you are about Pan-Africanism, if you believe in black people worldwide should be standing up and have dignity, self-respect, national sovereignty, if you want them to come together in an alliance that actually, where we can be proud as African peoples worldwide, you have to stand with Eritrea. You have to stand with the peoples in the Horn of Africa. You have to stand with Ethiopia and Somalia as well, too.
On your question, do we have atrocities? Right now, in 2020, in the U.S., we had 19,000 people killed of firearms. This is some serious stuff. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You don't hear the Western media constantly talking about 19,000 people have been killed because of gunshots. Mm-hmm. So, just like that in Ethiopia, is there atrocities happening right now? Absolutely. Are there people being victimized because these people want to come back to power, and these people are not going to benefit the people that are, the poor, innocent people that are down there that they're sacrificing. So yes, there's obviously, when there's chaos, there's looting, there's rape, there's, people being caught up in between. So yes, obviously there is. But is there propaganda to escalate that situation, to exaggerate that situation so that somebody can get a leg up, is the question. And that's absolutely right. And what's frustrating to me as an Ethiopian American is when I vote for my, for my representatives, and I see that the news that they are fed about Africa in general comes from people who do not have any idea about Africa and who are basically told what to report. And we're not telling our stories. So the problem is, what is the story behind it is what people do not understand. What is the story behind it? And the bottom line is, we have a terrorist group who used to be a ruler for 27 years, who have pretty much taken all the money that the country has, who has resources out here in DC, New York, and everywhere else, in Paris and everywhere else, controlling the media, controlling, everyone, to government officials, corrupted. And what are they doing? They are trying to get any type of intervention so that they can come back in power. This is how bad the game is.
Wow.
And we Africans, African Americans, Black people need to wake up, because every time we see a news about an African country and how horrible they are to each other, that means it's telling you there is something of interest there. And usually it has to do with resources, because Africa has a lot of resources now. We, as the African continent, is probably the only continent that has the most important things that the rest of the world needs.
Always has.
And so all eyes on these countries, and they want regime changes based on who's going to sell and who's going to benefit us. Right. So our voice is literally not being heard. And that's
by New Africa Institute, which we recently published back on May 9th, which goes through, it's 72 pages, has 300 references. So you could just sit there and go through all the stuff that they've lied about, the propaganda, the narratives, exactly how it works, all the stuff, we've been mentioning about, like, the details of how, stuff is manufactured. What they're, all this disinformation is manufactured. It's all in there. And what they're trying to do, again, I just want to emphasize, they want to take these countries to war because they represent resistance on the African continent. And this is really the last bastion of resistance there. And we all have to stand up, and there has to be a sense of urgency. So when you see something that seems like, it's a, gang rape or sexual violence or, massacre or whatever, we can't just take it at face value, because the thing is that TPLF is manufacturing this stuff, but again, they only represent 6% of the population there, but not even that 6%. They represent an elite group. A lot of them these activists are here in the diaspora that actually used, we don't have time to go into this, but just they've used migration as this policy to basically, using Eritrean identity and an Eritrean name to bring a lot of these activists from there to here, to then use them to then attack Eritrea and Ethiopia. And so we have to be very cognizant of the fact that when you're talking to somebody here and they say, hey, get behind this genocide that's going on, you have to understand that it's not, you have to be very critical. You have to have a very critical eye when you receive this information. And I know there's some people who go out, I'm not going to mention names, but certain celebrities who have caught on to some things and then kind of pulled back afterwards, feeling a little bit like, oh my God, like, who was I talking to? Because tribalism is a very serious problem in Africa. And it is a sickness that exists in Ethiopia because of the almost 3 decades of a system called ethnic federalism.
What's that?
So basically, if you could just imagine in California, if we were to apply it in America, imagine you said that California is Asia land, Texas is Mexico land, Mississippi is black land, Nebraska is white land or something like that. So you just go down the list. Obviously, that's going to lead to tensions. What are you going to do? You're going to do 3 things. You're going to argue over borders and territories. You're going to fight over resources. And then you're also going to ethnically cleanse to purify your little area.
The government will fund one. I'm sure the government will fund one more than the other.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what they did is they did this to enrich the Tigray region, but they didn't even give that money to the average Tigrayan peasant. Like I said, 1.5 million people were on food aid, even though they stole 30 billion over a 10-year period. God knows how much throughout their entire reign. So what I'm saying is that basically you have people who have looted the country, who do not represent the people, who have almost destroyed that country, but it's like a godsend. Prime Minister Abiy has risen. The people are behind him with these attacks on the Northern Command. Like they stopped that. immediately, and within 3 weeks we're able to defeat it. And honestly, this is like one of the greatest victories I think, in my generation. Like, it came out of nowhere. The peace deal with Eritrea, with Somalia, the change that's happening right now. There's a feeling of like we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it out of this horrible situation that we've been in for so long. And so us here in the diaspora, we're connected with our people back there always, and we feel as though we have to speak up. We have to do something, and we also understand that the TP, these activists who come on, we feel as though they're misguided, and we have to educate them as well. So we have to be sensitive about this stuff because they instilled this identity war among the people of Ethiopia. Some of these people feel like, oh, if we don't support TPLF, we're going to lose our identity as Tigrayan people. Some of them, small few, believe that, and so we have to actively work to convince them that no, it's not the case. You have to look beyond this. It's about that love, that respect, that humanity, and all that stuff. We have to find it within ourselves now to bring us together. And then the resistance part is to stop what the United States and the EU are trying to do to Eritrea, to Ethiopia, in the name of the Tigrayan people. Because there is no proof of genocide, of ethnic cleansing. Like she said, there may be some atrocities because of in war, when there's things are going on, things may happen. But we can investigate that. That's not an issue. We can look into that. But when you have a fishing expedition, when somebody's just actively looking to find a problem so they can come attack you, we're not going to send you in. Let's do it the right way. So this is an African problem. We want African solutions. We don't need Western colonization, these, master coming on in trying to tell us what to do. And they can help. There's no problem with help.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there anything Americans or people outside of Eritrea can do to help, or outside of Ethiopia can do to help?
Yeah, what helps the situation and not hurts it?
I think, like, people need to just, one, be aware of it because, our representatives, our Congress reps are working on these things. As much as, the regular American is not paying attention to it, they are actively functioning and working on it. I mean, Ethiopia was just sanctioned about, not even 2 weeks ago, that officials from Ethiopia cannot get visa, and they're planning on economic sanctions and so forth. And, all this is happening. It's just like saying, imagine Biden being sanctioned by an African country for having 19,000 people die of gunshots. Because if you ask me, that's 19,000 citizens is serious, right? And African countries sometimes are being sanctioned for people less than that number. So it's really about equality. It's really about how do we respect each other and how do we help each other if we really want to help each other, or is it a situation where it's a different type of we're colonizing and saying, the U.S. is going to say, stop raping your people. No, there is no government. Dr. Abiy is the Ethiopian prime minister, and he just came on 3 years ago. He has no intentions of having a group of his people raped. Just like Biden does not have any intention of having 19,000 of his citizens killed. So stop the demonizing of Ethiopian nations, or African black nations, by saying that all we're doing is killing each other. What we do need to do is, they have already promised investigation. They've already actually done investigation. They've taken some people to court. It's going to continue. But the bigger thing is that we as voters need to pay attention to foreign policy as well. That's pertaining especially to Africa. We really need to know where they stand, our representatives stand, because I'm personally very disappointed with the Democratic Party.
Same.
that I voted for. I actually prefer Trump calling us shithole countries and not coming in there and interfering the way the Democrats are interfering. I feel like the Democratic Party is using lobbyists. To me, that's corruption, right? Trump talked about that. He was absolutely right. I'm in D.C. Now lobbyists are back in D.C. making all kinds of money. This is really gangster, making decisions on other people's lives and countries. We need to wake up to that. And as black voters too, really, we shouldn't just be automatic Democratic anymore. I really dig what people like P. Diddy said. We need to stop that. We really need to have some kind of understanding that we need to know what the policies are going to be, not just for Africa, but for even for within the country, policies in regards to incarceration, healthcare, everything. And right now, the Democratic Party is not delivering for us, especially in the African front.
Yeah, I think Democrats and Republicans are two wings of the same bird.
Exactly.
You know, I just think black people, we just need something different. I don't think it's conservative either, but it's just we need something different.
I agree.
I mean, we saw what happened over this past year. It's been a year of resistance. A lot of people came out with, various issues. Obviously, the police murders of black people in America is the most prominent issue, and we need to solve that. And what we're seeing is that when you go to these protests and in the streets, occasionally there's the person who gives you the hey, vote for this, whatever. We need to start looking beyond voting and actually mobilizing people on the ground. So if they're going to take Eritrea, Ethiopia to war, we shouldn't be talking about who to vote for. I mean, you can add that as a little adjunct, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is what materially are you doing to stop this? Like, what are you mobilizing people on the ground? Are you sending stuff back there to stop this problem? So I think we need to focus on that, and also the media thing. So being vocal about this thing. If you see, follow us, follow what we're saying, and promote our work that we're doing, because we're putting this stuff out there for everyone to understand. So hashtags like hands off Ethiopia, hands off Eritrea, things like that you can get behind. And me personally, I say join revolutionary organizations. That I believe we should start thinking about in that sense. But let's not go on that. The focus is right now is there's a war that's being pushed for a potentially NATO war. The same thing that happened to Libya. I mean, we're talking about slave markets, open slave markets in Libya. How did this happen? This is the work of the United States. This is the work of the EU. They took that country to war, destroyed that country. And that was one of the most developed countries in Africa. And so now you're looking at a similar situation where you have the last bastion of resistance could be wiped off the map. And that should strike fear in everyone. Why? Because if you lose that, where's the resistance going to come from? Like, where is the homeland for black people, the African people worldwide? We need to have something where a pivot, where we have something where we can say we have this, we own this, we control this. And if we lose that, what do we have? So
listen,
yes,
simple and plain. I mean, I love all the information y'all giving out. Who is the enemy? Just who is the enemy?
Greed.
I mean, it comes down to the ruling class. Yeah, it comes down to the ruling class.
It's greed, but then just recently we had in the Capitol we had some people just storming the Capitol and wanting the previous administration to take over. Right now, when that happened in Ethiopia, the Western world is telling us to negotiate with them. So it's a double standard. You know why? Because the reason why is because they want chaos to continue. They don't want law and order. This actual conflict was called a law operation, law enforcement operation, because it's a law enforcement operation. When someone attacks your own base, defense base, it's a law enforcement operation.